Sex workers of Reddit, who was the grossest customer you've had? I was a sex worker/escort for 2 years. I was hired by a 73-ish-year-old professor, nice-sized public university. He hired me to go to his office and give him blowjobs. Yes, it was on campus grounds. Anyway, I'm giving him head and I smelled something foul. I wanted to stop, and as soon as I was about to, I see a lump of shit lodged in between his ass cheeks. I didn't want to embarrass him but told him that I was ready to go, that I never agreed to see him again. Exotic dancer here. I watched a girl get on stage with a bottle of Heineken and put it into her vagina, then do a handstand effectively drinking it. She then stood back up and the beer went VM back into the bottle and someone paid her to drink it. I had a client who scraped the crotch of my panties with a knife, then put the scrapings in his pipe and smoked it. When I was a sex worker, it was genuinely alarming how many men wanted me to act like a child and dress in a school uniform as part of a session. I always point blank refused, but it made me feel sick to my stomach. As for actually gross clients, there was one guy who was gearing up for ages to hire me to have a fairly vanilla session with him and went back and forth on it for ages. He said he had been with another guy before, but from his conversations I had my doubts. When he finally set up a time to meet with me and I got to his place, I was literally bombarded with the most egregious rancid odor known to man. He answered the door and his place was dirtier than anything I'd ever seen before, trash all over the floor, bins piled high with rotting food scraps. He took me to the bedroom where he had cleared a spot on the bed that was barely enough space to sit on, never mind fuck on, and unzipped his pants. This then introduced me to what can only be described as how I imagine a sulfur mine smells. His dick was basically caked in smegma and the scent of acrid urine. I didn't even touch it or get any closer. I literally stood up and walked past him and out of his place without saying a word. No amount of money is worth it to get down and dirty in a place that should be condemned. Before I went independent, I worked for a service. They sent me out on a call, and when I got to the apartment I had to be buzzed in. I opened the door and it's large loft-style apartment and there are piles of trash everywhere. I'm standing in the doorway thinking, oh shit, and I hear a voice from up in the loft telling me to come around and up the stairs. So I do, doing my best to avoid touching anything, and I climb the stairs and the entire loft area is a king-size bed, trash all around the bed and a massive obese man laying in the bed. Fortunately, it was incredibly quick. But I told the service I never wanted to go back. Edit. Wow, this blew up overnight. To answer some questions, yes, I went through with it. How did I get through it? Environment aside, he was actually really sweet. We chatted for about 30 minutes before he asked for oral. He finished within 2 to 3 minutes. Also, I've always been really good at disappearing in my head. At the time, it never occurred to me that I could say no. It was at the very beginning, and at that time I had a hard time saying no to begin with. I'd say he was more like Dale the Whale but younger. My brother once was the maintenance guy in a brothel in Switzerland. One morning a guy came in and asked if the used condoms from the night before were still available. He wanted to buy, open and eat them. Every time I think about that story it makes my mind crawl. I did bottle service at a strip club for a while. This is a story from a bar back I was friends with. He was working at another club prior and was friends with a stripper who had some wealthy regular customer that would pay her to pee in a glass and he would drink it. She couldn't pee that night, so asked the bar back to pee in the cup for her. He did, and the customer sat and drank it. I'm a webcam model, and the amount of grown-ass men fantasizing about their underage nieces, neighbors or sisters is disturbing. I always block them. I rather be poor than engage on their disturbing fantasies. When I was working under a service, I got called to meet with an older man in his 70s, regular to the service, that wants to take some extreme photos and receive a BJ to completion. When I got to his place, he walked me to a room with a life-size crucifix and a noose hung on the ceiling that can be lowered and raised. First set of photos, I slipped my wrists through metal hoops of the crucifix. Second set of photos, I was on tippy toes with the noose, loose-ish, around my neck. I was told to act dead, expressionless, limp. After the photos we set up for the BJ and his dick was too low for when I'm on my knees, so he found a crate to stand on. As I was blowing him, I noticed stabbing pain on my thighs but pushed through because he was already coming, didn't take long. I looked down and it was his gross long ass yellow and black toenails that were stabbing my thighs. Literally dry heaving thinking about it, face vomiting. Edit. I was told about the crucifix and noose beforehand. Other girls also have gone before with no issues. When I got there and saw that the guy is really old and moves slow, I did not feel threatened or afraid, and I made sure to be observant of him the whole time for signs of aggression, but apart from the death-related fetishes, he was quite meek. After the ordeal we shared a joint and talked for a bit. Knowing I will not be returning, I asked him how he developed his fetish with the nooses and crucifixes. He said matter-of-factly that it all started with being physically abused by his mother as a child and witnessing his mother killing herself via hanging. I was very surprised and appreciative of his honesty, definitely one of the more eye-opening, disturbing experiences I've had in SW. A friend of mine used to work at a brothel. She told me about a client, late 40s to mid-50s, who wanted her to wear his actual daughter's clothes and do some father/daughter age and incest play. He claimed it was the only way to satisfy his urges without doing something despicable. His daughter was 14 and he was bringing in her actual clothing. Apparently he was a regular and would call ahead looking for young petite workers who were up for the extreme age play. My friend said she saw him once and was pretty creeped out by the experience, so declined him on further visits. She also said that as far as weird clients go, he was an ideal punter at face value. He was upfront about what he wanted, never pushed any of the girls' limits and paid whatever they demanded, which unfortunately was not the standard behavior for every John. She did say that it was the most creepy client she had though. I am an actual FS sex worker. I've been doing this for about 6 years. Thinking about possibly quitting soon. Anyways, I had this guy who wanted me to make out with him with another guy's cum in my mouth. Not after a guy came in my mouth, while there was cum in my mouth. This obviously wasn't the easiest thing to do. So I had another client who became more like a friend, and when we got rooms I'd text cum guy and tell him to get ready. Any time of day/night he'd be ready, so I always made a quick $160 in 10 minutes just for making out with the guy with cum in my mouth. This was about 4 years ago, before I realized I am worth much more than I set myself at originally. Now I charge minimum $200 before I'll even get out of bed, and that's for only 15-minute massages. This job definitely leaves you scratching your head and genitals if you're not careful.